Hello students, welcome to the sixth part of breathing and exchange of gas. In our previous part, we have read about the transportation of oxygen. Today, we'll see how carbon dioxide is transported in the blood and what other things are left in this chapter. We know that carbon dioxide can be transported as carbaminohemoglobin, like attaching with the hemoglobin. Most of the carbon dioxide are transported as bicarbonate ions, and 7% carbon dioxide is dissolved in the plasma. So let's begin with the carbaminohemoglobin. As oxygen is attached with the hemoglobin to become oxyhemoglobin, just like that carbon dioxide is attached with the hemoglobin to become carbaminohemoglobin. About 20 to 25% of carbon dioxide is carried in this way. So this binding of carbon dioxide with hemoglobin depends on the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, where it should be more, and definitely there should be less partial pressure of oxygen. So this condition we find it near the tissue where the oxygen is used up to produce carbon dioxide. In the lungs, we see the opposite scenario. That means the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low there, whereas the partial pressure of oxygen is high there. So definitely near the tissue this binding occurs, and at the lungs this binding dissociates. In the picture you can see the hemoglobin carries 4 oxygen molecules at the heme groups, but the carbon dioxide are not attached at the heme groups, rather it has its own active sites where they are bound with the hemoglobin. So at once 4 carbon dioxide can be attached with the hemoglobin. Now let's see the most important mode of transportation of carbon dioxide, that is as bicarbonate ions. At the tissue, when carbon dioxide are released, it is entering into the RBC. In the RBC there is an enzyme called as carbonic anhydrase. That enzyme has the capacity to convert the carbon dioxide into carbonic acid, that is H2CO3. But this carbonic acid is not stable. It is immediately converted into bicarbonate ion and H+. That H+ will remain in the RBC, but that bicarbonate ion will come out of the RBC, where from the plasma chloride ion is entering into the RBC. So that means at a time the bicarbonate ions are coming out of the RBC and chloride ions are coming inside the RBC from the plasma. See, chloride ions are already present in the plasma. So this kind of transportation we know we can call it as antipode, because two different things are running to the different directions. So now in the plasma the bicarbonate ions are traveled to the lungs. In the lungs, what happens near the lungs, that again the chloride ions present in the RBC are coming out to the plasma, and from the plasma the bicarbonate ions are entering into the RBC. That bicarbonate ion now again form the carbon dioxide with the presence of enzyme carbonic anhydrase. Students, remember that carbonic anhydrase has the dual property. It can convert the carbon dioxide into carbonic acid and then to the bicarbonate ion, as well as it will act on the opposite direction also. So it depends on the partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So at the tissue, when it is breaking the carbon dioxide into bicarbonate ion, at the lungs it again generates the carbon dioxide from the bicarbonate ions. As you can see in the picture, from the tissue, carbon dioxide is entering into the RBC, where carbonic anhydrase enzyme is present, that is breaking the carbon dioxide into bicarbonate ion and H+. That H+ is remaining inside that RBC, but the HCO3 ion is coming out of the plasma, and at the same time the chloride ion is again entering into the RBC. So that is happening in the at the same time, but to the opposite directions. So this movement of chloride ion is called as chloride shift. There are two circumstances. One is near the tissue, one is near the lungs. So in the tissue you can see the peripheral capillaries, what is happening from the tissue, the carbon dioxide are producing as entering into the RBC, where the carbonic anhydrase is converting the carbon dioxide into bicarbonate ion, and this ion is again coming out of the RBC to the plasma, where it is exchanged with the chloride ion. The opposite things is happening near the pulmonary capillaries, where the bicarbonate ion is entering into the RBC with the exchange of chloride ion as well, and here with the help of carbonic anhydrate it is again converted into carbon dioxide, which is released into the lungs, and lungs will expel them to the atmosphere. So this process is called as chloride shift. So here I have some interesting fact that 100 ml of deoxygenated blood carries 4 ml of carbon dioxide, whereas 100 ml of oxygenated blood carries 5 ml of oxygen. The thickness of the diffusion membrane that we have read, that the squamous epithelium of the alveoli, the basement substance present between the alveoli and the blood capillary, and the endothelium of blood capillaries, they form the diffusion membrane which thickness is less than 1 millimeter. The solubility of the carbon dioxide is definitely more than oxygen, which is about 20 to 25% more than that. Now comes the regulation of respiration. Respiration is regulated by our nervous system. The regulatory site of respiration is called as respiratory center, which is present in our brain at the medulla oblongata. You can see in the picture the medulla oblongata is encircled. So there are 3 groups of respiratory centers actually. They have respiratory rhythm center, pneumotaxic center, and chemosensitive area. Now let's discuss one by one. First come to respiratory rhythm center. The respiratory rhythm center is present at the dorsal side of the medulla oblongata, that is the back side of the medulla oblongata, as you can see in the picture. This center actually regulates the movement of diaphragm during inspiration. The signal from this center transmits to the diaphragm and helps it to contract. Now students, remember what will happen when the diaphragm contracts? Definitely it will lead to inspiration. So this inspiration that is occurring due to the contraction of diaphragm is regulated by respiratory rhythm center. Now let's discuss pneumotaxic center. Pneumotaxic center is actually regulating the respiratory rhythm center. It is present upper pons. At the upper pons you can see the pons that is present above the medulla oblongata. So they moderate the respiratory rhythm center. The signal from this pneumotaxic center determines the number and depths of the breath. So how many numbers of breaths we should have during 1 minute or some time interval, so that our body can get adequate amount of oxygen. So this thing is regulated by this pneumotaxic center. Another one thing is present, that is called as apneustic center, which is present just below the pneumotaxic center. As you can see that oval shaped green color represent that area that that controls the inspiration along with that pneumotaxic center. Now let's discuss chemosensitive area. It is situated adjacent to our respiratory rhythm center. So this is highly sensitive to the carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion concentration. When there is more amount of carbon dioxide and hydrogen concentration in the blood, a signal goes to the chemosensitive area that now it's time to release this carbon dioxide from the body. These signals are created by the receptors present at our aortic arc. Aortic arc, students, just remember it is present just near our heart where the aorta generates, and carotid arteries. Carotid arteries are the arteries which carries the oxygenated blood from heart to the upper part of our body, from heart to the brain. Okay, so these 2 parts have the chemosensitive receptors. They just give signal to this chemosensitive area. Now chemosensitive area sends signal to the respiratory rhythm center, and that is how our respiration is controlled. Our that respiratory rhythm center now provides signal so that to have deep breaths or to release the air as soon as possible as carbon dioxide content is getting more and more inside our body. Now let's discuss disorders of respiratory system. Asthma, which is very common these days, it is happening due to the difficulty in breathing and causes wheezing sound while we breathe. So the breathing is not normal. Here actually what happens, the bronchi and bronchiole of lungs, inflammation occurs in them, so that the wall of them is swelling up and the airway, the lumen, it becomes smaller, so that adequate amount of air cannot pass through it. Next, emphysema, which occurs due to cigarette smoking. It is a chronic disease. Once it happens, then it will remain lifetime. And here the alveolar wall swells off, and two alveoli, they connect with each other to form one broad large alveoli, which is very bad because the air is not totally expelled out during our normal expiration. So some amount of air is still present in the alveoli, which should not be there, and it causes the increase in the number of lung size. So definitely it is not good for us. So emphysema, as you can see in the picture, a healthy lungs how it looks like, a damaged alveoli how it looks like. Next, occupational respiratory disorder. It occurs due to the people who have their occupation, who have their jobs at some mining sites or some industrial areas where there is more chance of getting into accustomed with the smokes, dust, etc. So they are pulmonary disease due to the frequent exposure to the harmful substances like gas, fumes, dust, etc. So example is silicosis. So it happens when you have repetitive encounter with silica dust. It happens with the mining industry. And asbestosis, who the workers working the asbestos company, they are coming into the contact with the asbestos dust all the time. So definitely their respiratory tract gets infected, and they have not any healthy way of their respiration. So this is all about this chapter. From next video onwards, we'll start a new chapter. Thank you.